Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay. So let me share the presentation. Okay. So today we are planning to cover step 3 opioids. In addition to that, we will also talk regarding some of the second step opioids. What are the mechanism of action of opioids, and what are the problems that we will face when we use opioids, and how to overcome those. What are the side effects of opioids? Okay, so all of you should be very active. Actually, this is going to be an interactive session. So I request all of you to come up with some answers whenever questions are asked. So all of you know that this is the WHO analysis ladder, and in this, the role of opioids is from second step onwards. In the second step, we use weak opioids like tramadol, codeine, dextropropoxyphene, and tapentadol. But in the third step, we have strong opioids or moderate or opioids for moderate to severe pain, such as morphine, fentanyl, methadone. There are many other step 3 opioids available in the West, but it is not available in India. So we have only three opioids which are available for oral administration: methadone, morphine, and fentanyl. Fentanyl is not orally; it is available in other forms. You can see this patient. So what is the, suppose this patient is coming to you and he is sitting near to you in your casualty bed. So what what is the problem he is facing now from his appearance? Anybody?
Hello.
Yeah.
If it is muted, how can we? Now it is unmute. His basic problem is pain wherever he is holding his hand. Got extreme pain in the the mandible region, and there must be some lesion inside.
Okay.
And secondly, he may be having a problem of not able to open his mouth. Possibly, nothing
Okay.
is seen, but still appears to be like that.
Okay, so I see that there are some response in the chat, and Dr. Misha, Dr. Murali, and Dr. Indu. All of them says it's pain. Okay, so this patient, he's a 56-year-old man with carcinoma of the larynx, and his main problem is severe pain. You can see his pain score is 10 by 10, and there is no radiation of pain. He described it as a sharp pain, and he was unable to sleep because of pain for the last 2 weeks. So, Rajlakshmi, can you mute those who are speaking?
Yes, sir. Yes. I request all participants to stay muted. Whenever sir asks question, you can unmute yourself and speak. Till then, stay muted, please. Thank you. Sir, over to you.
Okay. So, you can, how will you manage this patient? Suppose this patient comes to you. How are you going to manage this patient? You can unmute yourself and speak.
You said he has got a carcinoma larynx.
Yeah.
Whether he has got respiratory difficulty in respiration, because if the growth is there in the larynx, he may be having some problem with his respiration. That is not clear. And his main problem is pain, but
Yeah.
whether the whole of the larynx is blocked or not, it will depend on that.
He has tracheostomy. He doesn't have any
Acha.
respiratory problem.
Yes, okay. Now only pain management is required.
Okay. So how are we going to manage the pain?
We will go by WHO's stepwise, as is taught to us, stepwise only.
Okay.
And if the response is not good with step 1, step 2, then only you can step up to step 3, opioid.
Okay.
That is what is taught to me, huh? Right.
Okay. This patient has pain score of 10 by 10. That means he has severe pain. So
Severe.
in severe pain, we need not start the patient on first step. We can directly go to the third step. Otherwise, what happens? You will start on step 1 and will wait for 1 or 2 days, then move on to second step, then again wait for 2 or 3 days, and then move on to third step. It is not necessary because we are actually patient is going to suffer for these 4 or 5 days. So we can directly start on step 3 if the patient has severe pain. If the patient has moderate pain, we can start directly on second step. Okay. So this patient you can say this patient after 45 minutes patient was like this, so he was able to smile. So what happened or what was the magic behind this? So it is intravenous morphine. Okay, so how will you give intravenous morphine or intravenous morphine titration? This is also known as intravenous morphine titration. The ambule which is available in Kerala is 15 milligram in 1 ml. So 1 ml contains 15 milligram of morphine, and you can dilute the 1 ml with 9 ml of normal saline. So total 10 ml. 10 ml contains 15 milligram, and from this you can take 1 ml. So 1 ml will be 1.5 milligram. So give injection morphine 1.5 milligram at every 10 minutes interval. Okay. So injection morphine is administered 1.5 milligram at 10 minutes interval. So what is the immediate side effect that you are expecting by giving injection morphine of 1.5 milligram to a patient who is in severe pain?
He may have respiratory depression.
Sedation, sir. He will have sedation.
He will have
Okay.
depression also, respiratory depression.
Okay. Any other answers?
Sedation, sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Constipation. Constipation.
No, constipation.
Not here.
He will not track.
No.
Consti-
Yeah.
Constipation.
Okay. I am asking about the immediate side effect. When you
Nausea,
add-
sir.
Nausea. Yeah. It's nausea because this patient has very severe pain. So with 1.5 milligram of morphine, you will not produce respiratory depression. We will talk about respiratory depression later, but the immediate side effect that we are expecting is nausea and vomiting. Okay. So you have to give an antiemetic before starting intravenous morphine titration. So you can give injection metoclopramide 10 milligram.
Can we not give ondansetron? Instead of
Ondansetron,
metoclopramide?
ondansetron can be given, but better to give metoclopramide because there are some other reasons. Okay. So
Okay.
how many 1.5 milligram are you going to give, or when will you stop the morphine titration? So the endpoint is either the patient has satisfactory pain relief or the patient develops sleepiness, whichever is first you have to stop. So suppose this patient after receiving some 6 milligram he's drowsy, but his pain score is only 6. Then what will you do? You have to stop the trial because the patient became drowsy because the pain was not purely opioid sensitive. Okay. So endpoint is either satisfactory pain relief or sleepiness, whichever occurs first. So when you give intravenous morphine titration, you can have a chart like this, and you can record all this. What is the time at which you are starting the morphine trial? What is the pulse rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate, pain score? Is the patient drowsy or not? And what is the dose of injection morphine you have administered? Suppose this patient came at 10 a.m. and you looked all the vitals, and the pain score is 10 now. Patient is not drowsy, so you will administer 1.5 milligram, and you will wait for another 10 minutes. So that's you have to give 1.5 milligram every 10 minutes. So you will at 10 a.m. you will look for the vitals. You will ask the pain score. Now the pain score is 7, and patient is not drowsy. So you can give another 1.5. Wait for another 10 minutes. At 10:20, you will again record vitals. Now pain score is 4. Patient is not drowsy. Give another 1.5. Wait for 10 minutes. Again, you are assessing. Now pain score is 1 and there is no drowsiness. So you can stop because the patient has good pain relief.
Pain has got relieved.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this patient with 4.5 milligram, patient has good pain relief and he is not drowsy. Okay. So is this procedure an inpatient procedure or outpatient procedure? Intravenous morphine titration. What do you think?
Oral preparation is not available, sir.
Oral preparation is available, but the injectable preparation will give faster pain relief compared to oral preparation. So is it an inpatient procedure or outpatient procedure? Okay.
Inpatient,
Yeah.
Inpatient.
Okay.
inpatient.
Thank you. Actually, patient need not be an inpatient. We do it even in our community settings, not even in our hospital OPD. We do it in peripheries in the OPDs. So you need not admit the patient for intravenous morphine titration. Okay. So now this patient has good pain relief with 4.5 milligram of IV morphine. So you want to discharge this patient, you want to send the patient home. So how will you, or what will you do? You have to convert it into orally. So how much dose are you going to give to this patient? Any idea?
No idea.
10 times is 4.5 milligram into 10. That becomes approximately 45 milligram given at an interval of 4 hours. Divided
45 milligram in divided doses.
in 24 hours.
milligram TDS or 4th hour.
Okay, what is the duration of action of morphine?
Duration 4 hours.
4
Just to
hours.
give 4 hours. All oral morphine are given 4 hours.
Okay, so we have to give it 4 hourly, but the concern is about the dosage. So in a patient who is not on any opioids at present, this patient was not on any opioids. That patient is known as opioid naive patient. So if you are giving intravenous morphine titration to a patient who is opioid naive, you can convert the same IV dose to oral dose. That means 4.5 milligram is equivalent to 4.5 milligram oral route every 4 hourly. But we have to also look into the available strength of morphine tablet. So what are the tablets, strength of morphine tablet available?
5 milligram.
5 and 10. 5 and 10. And
Okay.
SR tablet is available for 20, 30.
Okay. In Kerala, we have only 10, 20, and 50 milligram immediate release tablet. So it is not practical to give 4.5 milligram. So we can round it up to next whole figure, that is 5 milligram. So you can give 5 milligram every 4 hourly. Okay.
So that means, sir,
Yeah.
the trial of IV morphine trial dose where we are settled at
Yeah.
4.5, same is oral dose.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
So this is how you will administer morphine. Tab morphine 10 milligram. When the patient wakes up, you can give half, that is 5 milligram. Then 10 a.m., 2 p.m., 6 p.m. And at bedtime, when the patient goes to sleep, you can give double dose.
Yes, that's
So
we are
you,
practicing.
so you will avoid giving morphine at 2 a.m. because the patient, it is very difficult for a patient who is sleeping, or so you can avoid that 2 a.m. dose.
This
So
is the same practice. This is same practice is done by
yeah,
us.
yeah. Okay, thank you. So in addition to this, you can also give half as an SOS dose. So in addition to the regular dose, you can also give SOS dose. Okay.
One doubt.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, sir. Can it be given 50 milligram sustained release BD 12 hourly?
Okay, and there is if 15 milligram sustained release is available, that can be given. But the problem is 15 milligram is not available. And for the first few days, you have to actually see how much morphine he would need. This patient may need additional SOS dose. So you have to calculate the SOS dose. Once the patient pain is stabilized, there is a lot of disturbance. Rajalakshmi? Rajlakshmi,
Yes, sir. It is muted.
Can-
Sir. You can continue.
Rajlakshmi, can you share the slides from there? I am finding it difficult to move the slides. I don't know what happened.
Oh, okay, sir. Let me see.
Okay, so when you are ready, please share it.
Sure.
Okay, so you can give morphine 4 hourly, and in some places more intravenous morphine will not be, is not available. So in such places we can also give oral morphine trial. Okay, so oral morphine in opioid naive patients, you can start with 5 milligram 4 hourly and SOS. Whereas if the patient is already on weak opioids, you can give 10 milligram 4 hourly and SOS. So opioid naive patient, you will start with 5 milligram 4 hourly and SOS. Those patients who are already on opioids, weak opioids like tramadol, codeine, or something like that, you can start with 10 milligram Q4H and SOS. So we will move on to another patient story. The same patient who we saw. So this patient, the Mr. X, after intravenous morphine titration, we started him on 5 milligram morphine 4 hourly and SOS. He was relatively pain-free for the last 2 weeks. But after that, he actually needed 4 morphine doses per day for the last 4 days. What shall we do now? You can unmute and speak.
We can increase the dose. It is for 5 milligram. We have to go to 10 milligram.
Okay.
That is what is practiced here.
Okay. So what is the indication for increasing the dose of morphine?
Because he, after 4 days, he had no, again there was pain was there. So naturally you have to increase the dose because it keeps on, this is what is usually practiced. What is, I don't know what is your.
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you, sir. So this patient actually need more than what he's taking regularly. That's why he needed 4 SOS dose. So we have to increase the dose of morphine. So when will you increase the dose of morphine? If the patient is taking 2 or more than SOS doses. So if the patient is taking 2 or more SOS doses, you can actually increase the dose of morphine by 30 to 50%. Okay, so for this patient, if you take, he was taking 5 milligram. Okay, so if you increase increase it by 30%, so 30% of 5 milligram is 1.5. So it is not possible to give 6.5 milligram. So we will look for 50% increase. That means 50% of 5 is 2.5. So 5 plus 2.5, 7.5. So you can increase it up to 7.5 milligram every 4 hourly. But the problem is that it will be very difficult to break the morphine tablet into 4 pieces. So maybe even 10 milligram is okay. How frequently would you give SOS dose of oral morphine? How frequently we can give SOS dose?
We can give after 1 hour also.
As
After
the
1 hour?
patient needs to be pain free, if the patient doesn't feel drowsy.
Okay, but let me ask a question. The patient has taken morphine tablet at 10 a.m. and by 10:30, patient is saying, I have severe pain. What will you do? What will you do? We'll give next dose. Okay. To answer this question, we have to go into a little bit of pharmacology of morphine. Okay.
Sir, let us know when we want to share the screen.
Yeah, you can share the screen now.
Okay, sir.
I will stop sharing. So do you know from where we get morphine? Or where can you see the poppy plants? Yeah, this is the poppy plant. And it is legally cultivated only in 3 states of India. That is UP, MP, and Rajasthan. So the scientific name of poppy plant is Papaver somniferum. And from which part of this plant you will get morphine powder? From which part?
Flower.
Flower? Anybody else?
Seeds.
Leaf, seeds.
Seed.
Yeah, Dr. Deepthi says pods. Okay, so we can get opium from all parts of this plant. Okay, but the most abundant part is pod. Pod is this seed-like thing is known as pod. Okay, the International Narcotic Control Bureau decides which country can produce morphine powder from which part of the plant. So I think India is the only country which is allowed to produce morphine from pod. Okay, and which is the most abundant source. And actually, we are the biggest producer of opium, India, but we are exporting it all to the other countries. And only 2% of our people are getting morphine or other opioids. So we are producing, but our people are not getting. Next. So we will move on to pharmacokinetics of morphine. So after when you administer morphine orally, it is hydrophilic in nature. That is, it is water soluble. So because of this water solubility, it has a slower onset of action, but longer duration of action. It is absorbed from the upper small intestine. Next. And these are few things which you have to be careful, because some people will ask you to administer morphine sublingually, but research says that after sublingual or buccal or gingival absorption, if you have pain relief, most probably it is because you have swallowed it. because morphine is not absorbed, absorption is not very good through the sublingual or buccal or gingival route. And if you powder the morphine, it has a bitter taste also. So you have to sweeten it with something and before administering it to the patients. Next. So after absorption, you can see when you swallow the morphine, it goes to the gastrointestinal tract. It is absorbed from the upper small intestine and it goes into the blood vessels, and from the blood vessels to portal vein, from portal vein to liver, where metabolism takes place. And the metabolites are liberated into the systemic circulation. This is how you will get pain relief. So this process will take about 30 minutes and you will start getting pain relief by 30 minutes, but the peak effect will be by 1 hour. So it is better to administer next morphine after 1 hour of the previous dose. So if a patient has taken morphine at 10 a.m. and if she is complaining of pain by 10:30, you will ask her, we can wait for some more time and we will wait for another 30 minutes. So at 11 a.m. we will reassess the pain, and if she has pain, we can give morphine. Okay. And what happens in the liver? In the liver, metabolism takes place. Not only in the liver, minor part of metabolism also takes place in gastrointestinal tract as well as in kidney, but major metabolism in liver. And you have to understand that all of the morphine will be absorbed from the gastrointestinal tract, but only 90% is converted into metabolites. And out of this, there are two main components or main metabolites known as morphine 3 glucuronide and morphine 6 glucuronide. And morphine 6 glucuronide is the active component which will give you pain relief. Morphine 3 glucuronide doesn't have much action in our body, but see that morphine 3 glucuronide is formed in big quantity compared with the morphine 6 glucuronide. Next. So we will administer morphine after 1 hour of the previous oral dose. Next. So our patients, the dose was increased. It is 10 milligram, and he doesn't have pain now. But the patient says, I am unable to take it every 4 hours. I am taking a lot of tablets. So if you are willing to give it less frequently, I will take. Otherwise, I will not take. So what will you do now?
You give the same dose, the 10 milligram, 1, 2, 3, 4, 60 milligram can be divided into 30 milligram SR, sustained release, because the dose has to be same because it's stabilized on that dose. So same thing given in slow release form, 30 milligram SR BD.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Next. So you can administer sustained release morphine, which has a duration of action for 12 hours. But it is costly compared to immediate release tablet, where the duration of action is only 4 hours. Here, sustained release, the duration of action is 12 hours. Here, the patient was taking 10 milligram every 4 hours. That means patient was taking 60 milligram per day. So you will divide it into 2. So 30 milligram BD can be given. So you can administer with a BD dosage. Next. So these are the preparations of morphine available. Aqueous solutions are available, and capsules are also available, but only in some places. Immediate release and controlled release tablets are available. Injection morphine is also available. Next. So our patient is on morphine 10 milligram every 4 hourly for the past 6 months. But now he is brought to you with excessive drowsiness, and you found that his serum creatinine is Now 5 milligrams per deciliter. What will you do now?
Reduce the dose to half
Okay, why should we reduce the dose?
because creatinine is on rise. It's having a renal impairment. So you have to reduce the dose and you add something else. In addition, maybe SOS, some other, higher grade, this thing, opioid, maybe methadone, maybe fentanyl. But I'm not sure about fentanyl.
Okay, why the patient has drowsiness?
That means the dose which he's taking,
Accumulation of the morphine dose.
Sorry, Dr. Nishi?
The morphine gets accumulated, it is not removed from the body. So the cumulative dosage is the cause of drowsiness. So why is he having creatinine high? You have to treat the renal failure also.
Okay, here most probably this patient is drowsy because on 10 milligram morphine he was going good for the past 6 months and now he is drowsy. So probably because he has renal failure. So that what happened? Morphine is excreted through the urine by the kidney. So when there is renal failure, the metabolites of morphine gets accumulated, the M6G and M3. And then that will cause neurotoxicities like drowsiness, myoclonus, and delirium. So that's why this patient is drowsy now. So what you have to do is you have to stop the morphine for the time being till he becomes arousable. And once he is active, you can reduce the dose of morphine and give in reduced frequency. That is, instead of 4 hourly, you can give either BD or TID dosage, 10 milligram or 5 milligram. Next. Or you can also use alternate opioids, which are renally safe. So the renally safe opioids are fentanyl and methadone. Okay. Next. So we sent this patient on tab morphine 5 milligram, TID 8 hourly. And after 2 months, he was unable to swallow anything, including morphine. So what will you do now?
fentanyl can be used as a patch.
Okay, fentanyl patch is an option, but the problem is it is very costly.
Very costly.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Any other options?
I have no experience with methadone.
Yes.
Insertion of the Ryle's tubes.
Okay, but the problem is he is unable to take anything orally, probably due to an obstruction. We don't know. Even it will be difficult to pass a Ryle's tube. So what are we going to do in such situation?
In that
Use steroids, sir, to reduce the swelling.
gastrostomy tube.
Many other options are there for
Gastrostomy
his feeding. Yes, gastrostomy tube, feeding, jejunostomy.
Okay.
And for pain relief, I think interventions can be done, sir.
Okay. What interventions can we do in this patient?
So he has got laryngeal malignancy, so we can block superior laryngeal nerve or means accordingly, depending
Yeah.
upon the nerve which are involved.
Okay. So thank you for those suggestions. But I would like you to think in terms of what are the routes through which you can administer morphine. I saw somebody has written
Okay.
subcutaneous morphine.
Okay.
It's injectable form.
Subcutaneous.
Okay. Yeah, you are correct. But this patient is at home. So it will be difficult for administering intravenous or subcutaneous route. So what are we going to do? Jayalakshmi, next.
Any suppository?
Suppositories of morphine are not available, but you can administer morphine per rectally. Okay.
Yeah.
Next. 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 Yeah. So morphine can be administered orally, intravenously, or subcutaneously, per rectally, epidurally, and intrathecally. Next. So in this patient, next, you can use the morphine itself. So I told you morphine is hydrophilic. So you can make a paste of morphine by adding 2 or 3 drops of water and just put it into the rectal mucosa. The oral route and rectal route is comparable. So whatever you are administering orally, that you can give rectally in case of morphine. So 5 milligram 8-hourly oral morphine is equivalent to 5 milligram rectal morphine. The pain relief, duration of action, all are same. Okay. Next. So we have another patient, Mrs. K, 55-year-old lady with carcinoma of the colon with abdominal pain. It is continuous and patient is on 10 milligram morphine 4-hourly. And her pain is stabilized because she doesn't require any SOS dose of morphine. A doctor has asked them to place 25 microgram of fentanyl patch because the patient was finding it difficult to take morphine every 4-hourly. But the next day, patient is coming to you and tells you that I replaced the fentanyl patch after 5 hours because I had severe pain. So what will you do now?
She had removed fentanyl patch because there was no relief from pain, but
Yeah.
it does not give relief immediately. It takes almost more than 12 hours to have.
Okay.
And then only that.
Epidural blockade,
Okay.
epidural pain management.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Any other thoughts? Okay. So there are a few important points. What Dr. Kale told is right. When you apply fentanyl patch, it will take about 8 to 12 hours to act. Because what happens once you apply the fentanyl patch, it will produce a subcutaneous tissue depot. And from this depot, the fentanyl will be released into the systemic circulation. So for this subcutaneous tissue depot to develop, it will take 8 to 12 hours. But this patient replaced the fentanyl patch after 5 hours. So what we have to do is, for the first 8 to 12 hours, when you apply the fentanyl patch for the first time, you have to give the opioid which he was using previously. So this patient was using 10 milligram of morphine previously. So you have to continue the same dose of morphine for the first 8 to 12 hours. Okay, next. Fentanyl is available in 3 preparations. Injections are available. Transdermal fentanyl patch is available, and oral transmucosal fentanyl citrate, which is a lollipop, is also available. Compared to morphine, fentanyl is lipophilic, and fentanyl is about 100 to 150 times more potent than morphine. Okay, next. And the duration of action of one fentanyl patch is for 3 days. When you apply the fentanyl to the skin, don't shave the area because it will produce abrasions, so that absorption can be increased. And also temperature can also affect the absorption. And if there is fever, the absorption will be more. Actually, a fentanyl patch is not suitable for patients whose pain is not stabilized. But now,
Hello, excuse me, sir.
Yeah,
You said do not shave the area.
yeah. Don't shave the
No
area.
shave. No shave. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I see that there is a tendency to use fentanyl patch for each and every pain. That is not correct. Because once you apply the fentanyl patch, fentanyl can only liberate constant amount of fentanyl into the blood. So we don't know how much fentanyl will this patient require. So what we can do is you start with morphine and find out the dose at which his pain gets controlled, and then only you convert it into fentanyl patch. So fentanyl is not the first line, or transdermal fentanyl patch is not the first line treatment for acute severe pain. Okay, you have to stabilize the pain with short acting opioids like morphine. Next.
So one
Yeah.
question, sir.
Yeah.
So once the dose is stabilized with morphine, the pain is stabilized, I mean,
Mm.
if we need to convert it to a patch, then what is the conversion dose from oral morphine to transdermal fentanyl?
Okay, so 60 milligram of oral morphine is equal to 25 microgram of fentanyl patch. So 30 milligram of oral morphine is equivalent to 12.5 microgram of fentanyl patch. So that's how you calculate. It is 100 times more potent for calculation purpose. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will move on to another patient. Okay, and there is another question. What is the maximum safe dose of morphine per day? Any answers? Anybody?
It can be up to even 700 milligrams.
What is the maximum dose?
It's not
700?
written, but it can be even up to 700 milligrams as per the Western literature.
Okay, Dr. Anita Chandana says there is no upper limit. So I should
No.
say that there is no upper limit for morphine, and the dose which is required for that patient is the maximum dose for that patient. So most of the patients will get pain relief with about 20 milligram of morphine 4 hourly. But I had a patient who was a practicing lawyer, who he was taking 450 milligram of morphine 4 hourly without any problems. He was going to court and practicing. So there is no upper limit. So we have a patient who is 70-year-old man with carcinoma of the lung and has neuropathic pain of right upper limb due to nerve infiltration. He is on morphine 10 milligram 4 hourly, amitriptyline 75 milligram HS, and pregabalin 150 milligram BD. He attends your clinic with delirium and myoclonus and doesn't have satisfactory pain relief. How will you manage the pain of this patient? Anybody?
Regional blockage, now block.
Okay, regional nerve block. Anybody else?
Sir, as you said, it is only 10 milligram. You
Yeah.
can increase the dose. That's all. That's the commonest. Because amitriptyline is given, pregabalin is given for neuropathic pain. So morphine can very well be used, increased to from 10 to 20 or by stepwise. That is the first thing which comes to my mind.
Okay. Anybody else has any opinion?
I differ. I think that pain is
Yeah, Dr.
Morphine.
Shilpa.
I think this pain is neuropathic and will not respond to morphine. In fact, he's having side effects due to morphine. So we need to decrease the dose and
Yes.
maybe increase on other neuropathic medication.
Okay. Dr. Dattara?
Yes, I think the morphine dose should be reduced and pregabalin should be increased. It is
Okay.
neuropathic pain.
Yeah. So here, actually, this patient has neuropathic pain, and you can see this patient has delirium and myoclonus, which says us that you cannot increase the dose of morphine. And amitriptyline is almost maximum, and pregabalin you can increase 150 milligram BD. The recommended dose is up to 600 milligram. That's the only option with adjuvants. But do we have any other option than increasing pregabalin and nerve block? because nerve block will not be easily available only if there are some pain physicians or anesthetists, then only they can do nerve blocks. So, Rajalakshmi, next. Here comes the use of methadone. Okay, so methadone will be a good choice in this patient. Methadone is a isomer of R-methadone and S-methadone. And methadone acts on all the receptors of opioids, mu, kappa, and delta. It acts as an agonist. And it is also an NMDA antagonist. Which is the other NMDA antagonist, you know? Anybody?
Ketamine.
Yeah, ketamine is the another NMDA antagonist. And methadone also inhibits the reuptake of noradrenaline and serotonin. So it acts like tricyclic antidepressant. So this three mechanism of action makes it a good medication for treating neuropathic pain, especially the last two, NMDA antagonism and tricyclic antidepressant like action. But it also has another side effect. It binds with human either agogo related gene in the myocardium, and it increases the QT interval, which can produce torsade points and sudden death. So that is one of the side effects. But this can occur only if the patient is on higher doses of methadone. Usually the doses which we use for pain relief will be less than 40 milligram. Okay, next. Methadone, a few important thing is that it will not give you sustained pain relief immediately, because after administration, it will go into the tissue binding sites and they will bind to the tissue sites. Once it is filled, the tissue binding sites are filled, then only it will be liberated into the systemic circulation. So this will take about next 5 to 7 days. So next. So methadone will take about 5 to 7 days for sustained pain relief. So you have to wait up to 5 to 7 days for increasing the dose. But whereas in case of morphine, you can increase the dose every 24 to 36 hours. Next. So after metabolism, it is excreted mainly through bowel. So it is not like morphine. Morphine is excreted mainly by kidney, but whereas methadone is excreted mainly by bowel. So it is safe in patients who has chronic kidney disease or renal failure. Next. And if you want to know more about methadone, this is an important source, which is a supplementary article in Indian Journal of Palliative Care. So there are these are articles written by Indian authors, so you can read this. This is only on methadone. Next. And this is another important paper you can read to become an expert in methadone prescription. Next. So these are the indication to use methadone. When are you going to use methadone? So if the patient has opioid toxicities, this patient is already having delirium, myoclonus. So that means the patient has opioid toxicities. In such patients, you can use methadone. And if the patient has neuropathic pain, you can use methadone. Opioid-induced hyperalgesia or tolerance is another indication. Patients who has pain and has chronic kidney disease, methadone is the option. And allergy to other opioids also. And so these are the few indications to use methadone. Next. So what is the dosage in opioid naive patients? That means patients who are not on any opioids, and if they have moderate to severe pain, you can use 2 to 7.5 milligram methadone per day, and the duration of action is 8 to 12 hours. Okay, so you can either administer it 2.5 milligram BD or TID dose. And even some people use it as an adjuvant to improve the analgesia. So they use it along with other opioids like morphine. So it is given only as once a day dosage. Next. Patients who are already on opioid, and suppose if they are taking less than 60 milligram of oral morphine, you can start with 2 to 7.5 milligram. Next. And if the patient is on 60 to 199 milligram of morphine, then, and if the age is less than 65 years, the conversion rate is 10:1. So 10:1, suppose the patient is taking 100 milligram of morphine, then you can divide it by 10. That is the 100 by divided by 10, that is 10 milligram. So 100 milligram of morphine is equal to 10 milligram of methadone. So you can give it 5 milligram BD. And if the patient is taking more than 200 milligram of oral morphine, or if the patient is more than 65 years, the conversion rate is 20. Next. So I told you about the importance of methadone, but you have to also be careful regarding some of the problems with methadone. Methadone has many drug interactions. Actually, the most of the medications which we use in palliative care, like antidepressants, benzodiazepines, antifungals, there are a lot of interactions with these medications, and antibiotics like azithromycin, ciprofloxacin, all the macrolides. So it can either increase the dose of, mostly it will increase the dose of methadone, and many of the medications which I told you can also prolong the QT interval. So when you administer medications with methadone, first of all, you have to be careful. Is it going to interact with methadone? And opioid equivalent conversion rates, I have already told you. And another important thing is you have to wait for 5 to 7 days before you increase the dose of methadone. You should not increase the morphine. Next. So this is morphine is available in India since 2018, and it is available in both tablet form as well as syrup. And actually methadone was available in India, I think many years back, since but it is available for pain relief since 2018, and it is 5 milligram tablet, and syrup contains 1 ml 5 milligram. So both the preparations are available for pain relief. Okay, next. So now we will move on to another patient story. One of you can read this patient story, please. Who is going to read? Somebody please read.
Mr. P. Hello.
Yeah, Dr. Kale.
Mr. P, 70-year-old man has carcinoma of the lung and is complaining of throbbing pain on the right front of the chest. Continuous. 5. The pain score is 5 out of 10. He is a known epileptic and is on phenytoin 100 milligram BD. How will you manage his pain?
Yeah, thank you, sir. So how will you manage his pain?
He's not on opioids.
He is not on opioids. Anybody?
Why not start on opioids straight?
Step 1, Dr. Chandana, Anita Chandana says step 1. What is the pain score? Yeah,
5 by 10.
5 by 10. So, which step of the ladder you have to choose?
Step 2,
Step 2. So,
Right.
what?
tramadol.
Tramadol. So,
With 50 milligram BD.
okay. Okay. All of you are happy?
Yes,
Doctor?
yes, yes.
Okay. Dr. Pragati says morphine. Dr. Deepthi says phenytoin is an enzyme inducer. Okay. What we need to be careful about tramadol? Anything? Okay. Tramadol is a opioid which can reduce the seizure threshold and it can precipitate seizure. Okay. So if you give tramadol to a patient who is already non-epileptic, there is a chance of precipitating a seizure. But it is usually told that when the dose exceeds 400 milligram or when you give IV tramadol, there is more chance. Okay. So here the choice, you can give tramadol, but there are better choices like tapentadol, or even you can use low dose morphine. And if you use less than 30 milligram of morphine per day, it is considered as step 2. Next. This is another patient story, Mrs. P, who is on tab morphine 50 milligram 4 hourly. She attends your clinic with severe pain. You have injection pentazocine and oral morphine tablet. How will you manage? How will you manage? Any answers?
One shot of pentazocine we can give, then continue with that morphine.
Okay, thank you, madam. So let's see. That's me next slide. Next. 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 Okay, opioids are classified into 3: agonist, antagonist, and agonist. So agonist, most of the medications or opioids which we know, like tramadol, morphine, fentanyl, methadone, all are agonist. The examples of antagonist are naloxone and naltrexone. And agonist antagonists are buprenorphine and pentazocine. Next. Next. Okay, next. 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 Okay. So just see these graphs. Here you can see the left one is agonist. Here you are plotting dose on the x-axis, and on y-axis it is pain. So when you give suppose an agonist like morphine, this much, you will have pain relief for this much. But when you increase the dose, you will get corresponding relief of pain. And theoretically, you will get 100% pain relief in case of an agonist opioid. But if you look at the next graph, you can see up to a point, you can increase the dose of agonist and agonist and you will get corresponding pain relief. But after that, this point, you can see the curve is plateau. So that's the maximum dose. And that's the maximum dose till which the agonist and agonist will give you the pain relief. So that means agonist has no ceiling effect for analgesia, but agonist and agonist has ceiling effect for analgesia. So that's the main difference between these two. And morphine is actually a pure mu agonist, whereas pentazocine is a weak antagonist at mu receptor and agonist at kappa receptor. So morphine is pure mu agonist, but pentazocine is weak antagonist at mu and agonist at kappa. So what will happen if you give pentazocine to this patient who is taking morphine? Pentazocine will replace the morphine from mu receptor. So there will be more pain. So you should not give injection pentazocine to this patient. Rather, you give morphine itself. Next. 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 Next.
Axis on 15 milligrams.
Okay. So next we will talk about adverse effects. So adverse effects can be divided into two: side effects and toxic effects. So what are?
एक
Sorry?
मिनट I mean this मैं webinar में हूँ. Constipation.
I don't.
Muted, sir.
So adverse. What are the side effects? Side effects means these are the adverse effects with the normal therapeutic doses. You can change Rajlakshmi. So the common side effects are constipation, nausea, vomiting, sleepiness and tiredness, itching, dry mouth, and urinary hesitancy. Okay, so constipation is the most important side effect. Almost 95% of patients will have constipation, and you have to treat it with regular stimulant laxatives, and you have to continue the laxative, that is bisacodyl. You should not give methyl cellulose or ispagula husk. Those all are contraindicated in morphine-induced constipation. So you have to continue regular stimulant laxative as long as the patient is on opioid. Next. So nausea and vomit. Yeah.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
You said stimulant laxatives only. That is
Yeah.
disappointing. Can this lactulose be given? No.
You can combine it with stimulant laxative.
Only lactulose will not
Bisacodyl,
help.
actually, the drug of choice is stimulant laxative, but
That is bisacodyl.
yeah, bisacodyl, senna, or sodium picosulfate. But
Ah.
some patients may not be able to tolerate the stimulant laxative. In such cases, you can use osmotic laxative, but that doesn't mean that it is the drug of choice. Drug of choice is stimulant laxative.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. So vomiting and nausea occurs in only 1/3 of the patients. So 30% of patients can have nausea and vomiting in the first few days of starting an opioid in an opioid naive patient. So for the first 3 to 5 days or maximum 7 days, you can give antiemetic. And it is mainly because it stimulates the chemoreceptor trigger zone in the brain. So how will you treat? Next. You can give next. Either D2 receptor antagonist like haloperidol, metoclopramide, or domperidone, or 5-HT3 antagonists like ondansetron, ganisetron, etc. But mostly people select D2 receptor antagonists like metoclopramide. Next. And nausea and vomiting is self-limiting. It will occur only for the first few days. So you need not give metoclopramide even after 1 week. That is not necessary. Sleepiness and tiredness also occurs in 1/3 of the patient only in initiation of the treatment. That is during the first 1 week. And after that, it's self-limiting. Next. And toxic effect. These are the adverse effects when you use more than the required dose of opioid, or when the patient pain is poor response to opioids. And the signs and symptoms are delirium, myoclonus, drowsiness, pinpoint pupil. Okay, if if the patient has toxic effect, you have to reduce the dose of the opioid. Next. So all of us are afraid of this. Opioids producing respiratory depression. Next. So this is a systematic review which came way back in 2003, and it says patients take their medication by mouth. Combined with normal gradual increase in dose ensures that respiratory depression is unusual. Next. And if respiratory compromise does occur, you have to seek an alternative explanation, such as pneumonia, pulmonary embolism, or cardiomyopathy, or co-administration with other sedating medications such as benzodiazepine. So respiratory depression, especially with oral morphine, is very, very rare. Actually, I haven't seen any case of respiratory depression during the last 16, 17 years of my palliative care experience, I have given injection morphine as well as oral morphine for thousands of patients. I haven't seen any case yet. Next. And this is another concern, opioids producing addiction. Next.
No, it doesn't produce.
So
Dose is adequate.
substance abuse as a result of medical use is low. So we are prescribing morphine or other opioids for treating pain. So the abuse is low. And there is a confusion between physical dependence and psychological dependence. Actually, psychological dependence is known as addiction. Next. Next. So what is addiction or psychological dependence? It's actually a disease. Addiction is described as a disease, and only it occurs in genetically predisposed individuals. So if you have a gene which predisposed to you to addiction, and if you have favorable environment, then you can become an addict. Next. It is not as same as physical dependence. If you take, many of you will be taking coffee in the morning. So if you don't get coffee in the morning, what will happen? What will be your reaction in the morning? Nobody is taking coffee?
Nothing specifically happens except the mind headache. Some people do have that.
Yeah, some headache and not feeling well, but you will not break into the other house where the sugar and coffee powder has kept, isn't it?
No.
So if you do that, that will be addiction. But what you have is withdrawal reaction. You are giving coffee to your body for the last so many years, and you are suddenly denying that. So your body will react to that. So that's physical dependence, which is expressed as withdrawal reaction. So in case of opioids also, if you give opioids continuously, and if you stop opioids abruptly, body will react. That's known as withdrawal reaction. So you should not do that. You have to actually taper the dose of opioids and then stop if you have given opioids for more than 1 month. Next. So this is the comparison of cost between different opioids, which we have to keep in mind, because we will be prescribing many medications, and patients will continue to come to us and tell you that I don't have pain relief. So maybe probably because they don't have enough money to buy it also. So morphine 5 milligram for hourly cost only through 3 rupees 50 paise per day, whereas tramadol will to give that pain relief of morphine, it will be about 24 to 50 rupees, whereas fentanyl patch will cost 250 to 400 rupees, and methadone will cost only 4 rupees 50 paise. So this is the comparison. Next. So thank you. We can.
So I have to ask you something.
Yes.
Dr. Kale from Nagpur.
Yes.
What is the use of buprenorphine?
Yeah, actually, buprenorphine doesn't have much role in palliative care, because we consider it as a partial agonist, and so it has a ceiling effect for analgesia. So in places where morphine is not available, you can use buprenorphine. Otherwise, morphine is considered as the gold standard for pain relief.
One more question, sir. Where is the actual use of, if the morphine is available in plenty, methadone, is it required at all?
Yeah, methadone is required, because actually we are using methadone since 2018, and there are many patients, not many, but maybe some 5 to 10% of patients who don't have proper pain relief with morphine. They can be rotated to methadone, so they will have good pain relief.
And is there any particular dose after which, suppose I am giving 120 milligram of morphine and he is not getting relief, shall I switch on to methadone?
Yeah, it will be good.
Okay. What is the equivalent dose of 60 milligram of morphine to methadone?
60 milligram.
of morphine to
Actually,
methadone.
Okay, if the patient is taking less than 60 milligram, you can use 2 to 7.5 milligram per day in divided doses.
Okay, thank you, sir. And more than 60?
Sorry,
Accordingly, more than 60 milligram?
more than 60 to, if the patient is on 60 to 199 milligram of morphine, the conversion rate is 10. So suppose the patient is taking 100 milligram of morphine, you can divide it by 10. So that 10 milligram of methadone can be used. So 5 milligram BD.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
So I also have a question.
Yeah, Dr. Shilpa.
So when you talked about giving an IV trial for
Yeah.
morphine in patients with severe pain, so you talked about the conversion dose in opioid naive patients,
Yeah.
but about who are already taking, they are already on morphine. So how do we do that?
Actually, for patients who are already on morphine or any other opioid, it is said that IV route is 3 times more potent. But in practically, we usually don't convert it by multiplying by 3. There is no guideline exist as such. So what you do is you understand that this patient will need more morphine. So maybe you can increase 30 to 50%. Yes,
Sir, is there any, hello, sir?
Yes, Dr. Diti.
Sir, is there any particular reason why metoclopramide is preferred over ondansetron in patients getting morphine?
Okay, so previously, actually for palliative care, there is a very good textbook, Oxford textbook of palliative medicine. Okay, so a previous edition said that the drug of choice for opioid-induced vomiting is D2 receptor antagonist, and that also the strongest D2 receptor antagonist is haloperidol, followed by metoclopramide and domperidone. But now literature says there is no choice as such, but if you give ondansetron, what are the side effects of ondansetron? Constipation is one of the common side effects of ondansetron. Now, for everybody is writing ondansetron for whatever be the type of vomiting. That is not right. So, if you give ondansetron for these patients who are on opioids, that will increase constipation. But if you take metoclopramide, it will act centrally as well as peripherally, and it is also a prokinetic agent. So, it will help in many ways. So we prefer metoclopramide. Dr. Hema.
Thank you, sir.
Is
Yes, sir.
the requirement of license for step 3?
Yeah.
Or
you have to get the recognized medical institution status. Actually, we have a session on that. Then we will discuss regarding how to access RMI status. Okay, Dr. Hema.
Yes, sir. Sir, I am an orthopedic surgeon, but I am practicing interventional pain management. So sometimes I am requested to prescribe medication for these cancer patients. So am I kind of, prescribing morphine or anything? Does it need a special certification or qualification, or after doing this course, particularly I will be able to prescribe, provided the institution has the certifications?
Actually, now the institutions who can stock and dispense essential narcotic drugs are known as recognized medical institution, or in short form, it is RMI. So in RMI, there will be a doctor who is in charge of that RMI. So under his, there can be many people who can actually prescribe RMI, but they should have enough qualification. After completing this course, you should be able to prescribe.
So what is the long form of RML, please?
Sorry?
RMN, what is the name?
RMI, recognized medical institution. This is
Recognized.
provided by drug controller of the state.
Okay, so after this course, I should be able to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, if you can follow up it with our team, you can
Yes.
send a mail to Rajalakshmi. She will definitely help you to procure RMI license.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So I think we will move on to patient story, which will be presented by Dr. Deepti Mall, sorry. So Arun, please share the presentation.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Deepti Mall Jose, Assistant Professor, Department of Pulmonary Medicine, Acacia Medical College, Kollam, Kerala. I am presenting the case of 72-year-old patient, male patient. His diagnosis is he's a case of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, group D, that is severe COPD. He has bilateral bronchiectasis, is in chronic respiratory failure, with his comorbidities being gastroesophageal reflux disease, benign prostatic hyperplasia, and adhesive colic. Next slide. His presenting complaints are severe breathlessness for the past 2 months, abdominal distension on and off for the past 2 years, hesitancy and frequency of micturition 2 years, heartburn, belching on and off 3 years. History of presenting complaints. The patient complains of progressive breathlessness on exertion for the past 10 years. It was initially on walking up a slight hill or hurrying on level ground. Now, for the past 1 year, he has breathlessness even while dressing and undressing. Now, for the past 2 months, he is too dizzy even to leave the house. He also has complaints of expectoration on and off for the last 20 years. The patient has symptoms suggestive of bladder outlet obstruction. He was found to have benign prostatic hyperplasia 2 years ago, but surgery was deferred in view of severe lung disease. The patient also has symptoms suggestive of gastroesophageal reflux disease secondary to hiatus hernia. The patient has abdominal distension and abdominal colic secondary to band adhesions, which were developed as a sequelae of incisional hernia that the patient underwent, incisional hernia surgery that the patient underwent 7 years ago. The patient says his breathlessness worsens each time he strains at motion or micturition or when he develops abdominal distension. On examination, the patient is conscious oriented. He is moderately built and nourished with a BMI of 20. He is dyspneic, tachypneic. He has a respiratory rate of 28 per minute. He has a saturation of 76% in room air, whereas at 3 liters of oxygen in nasal bronchs, he maintains a saturation of 90%. Lower respiratory tract examination reveals markedly reduced air entry bilaterally with bilateral coarse mid-inspiratory crepitations on inspiration. Pulmonary component of second heart sound is also loud, which gives an indication towards development of pulmonary hypertension. Next slide. The significant investigatory findings being X-ray chest shows severe hyperinflation bilaterally and bilateral cystic phases. ECG shows pre-pulmonale and poor progression of R wave. He is on inhaled bronchodilators by means of meter dose inhaler and spacer. He is on and off domiciliary nebulization with bronchodilator and steroid. He is also doing postal drainage at home in view of bronchiectasis. He is on diuretic started by cardiologist for pulmonary hypertension. Initially, he was initiated on home oxygen therapy by means of a rendered concentrated. Later, he discontinued because of financial constraints. Next slide. The psychosocial aspects are, he's a 72-year-old patient coming from a low socioeconomic background. He lives with his wife. He has 2 sons who are manual laborers. He has interpersonal issues with his sons. They are not on talking terms. They do not attend his call, neither do they call him. And he's distressed because his wife is taking care of himself all alone. He is not able to help his wife with household chores. He's also distressed because of repeated exacerbations mandating hospital visits and admissions. He feels like a burden to his wife and children and blames his condition for poor relationship with his kids. These are the medications that he is on. Formoterol, budesonide, 400 meter dose inhaler, 2 puffs twice daily with spacer. He's also on tiotropium meter dose inhaler with spacer. He's on and off nebulization salbutamol ipratropium. He's on PPI, prokinetics agents, and also on mucane gel prescribed by gastroenterologist. He's on aldactone 50 milligram OD and on urinary muscle relaxant. Next slide. So the patient's main concerns are, will his medical condition, or the patient, what he says is, will my medical condition ever get stabilized? Will my air hunger ever come down? How long will the agony last? He is also worried and distressed because he does not have enough money to provide for home oxygen therapy. And another main concern of his is what else can be done to reduce breathlessness other than what he is getting right now. Summarizing, 72-year-old patient, case of severe COPD, bronchiectasis in chronic respiratory failure, who also suffers from gastroesophageal reflux disease, urinary symptoms related to BPH and adhesive colic. He has severe breathlessness, he is too breathless even to leave the house, and has frequent hospital visits because of exacerbations. Now, the discussion points include the questions that he has asked me personally. The one thing being, will his air hunger ever come down? And then the second point is there any possibility to get help so that he can have domiciliary oxygen therapy or any hospice where he can go and get oxygen therapy with reduced cost? And another thing is there anything else that we can offer him apart from bronchodilators and controlled oxygen therapy that would reduce his respiratory distress? Now, patients with end-stage lung disease, not just COPD, it could be even be bronchiectasis or interstitial lung disease. Patients such as this patient, even with long-term oxygen therapy, ultimately they reach a stage where none of these measures help in alleviating dyspnea after a certain extent. So, is there any role for opioid in such patients? And also, another question is, can opioids be given for patients in chronic respiratory failure?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Deepthi. If anybody has any comments. So this patient with severe COPD, and he is having breathlessness, and he is actually asking, will my air hunger get away one day? And in addition, he also has abdominal colic. So what are we going to do for this patient?
I think they call for morphine here.
Okay.
For the dyspnea.
The two main concerns that we come across any patient coming with severe respiratory illness is, the one thing is ultimately they end up requiring long-term oxygen therapy. Now, long-term oxygen therapy is very costly. Costly in the sense we have oxygen concentrator machines that patients can avail for rent, but an oxygen concentrator machine costs about 5,000 rupees per month. Now, as far as an upper middle class is concerned, it might not be that much of a cost, but many of our patients who come to this hospital, they are from a low socioeconomic status and they struggle. So once we advise them, they agree, and they, with some discounts and all, they rent these oxygen concentrator machines and they use it for 1 or 2 months. But like in this patient's case, where he has no other support system, like he's not on talking terms with his sons, there is no way of him getting any financial help. In these situations, these patients ultimately end up giving back the oxygen concentrator machine and then again going back into the respiratory distress situation. That is the first thing. And the second thing is, even if we procure them an oxygen concentrator machine, and once they start themselves on a long-term oxygen therapy, again, after 1 or 2 years, they reach a situation where even though their saturation is maintained, they have severe breathlessness that is not getting reduced with nebulized or inhaled bronchodilators. And that at that stage, what are we to offer them further? These are the two main questions that we come across while treating patients with severe respiratory diseases.
Okay, who mentioned about morphine?
I said it.
Okay, Dr. Dattaram. So, do you want to explain more?
It is our experience that morphine helps in the COPD cases. I can't explain it more.
Yeah, it's okay, Dr. Dattaram. Thank you. Anybody else has any experience? Anybody else? Okay, I think here this patient suffers from many problems, but the most important thing is he is breathless. In addition to his financial problems, and he has psychological problems because of his problems with the issues with his sons. So for the breathlessness, we actually there are enough literature to say that morphine will be helpful in such situation, and even there are systematic reviews, and it says low dose morphine can be safely used in such situation. So the dose required for treating breathlessness is less than that is required for pain relief. So maybe it will be wise to start with 2.5 milligram of BD morphine and see how is the response. And usually a patient will require less than 30 milligram per day. And morphine, how morphine reduces the breathlessness? There are many mechanisms of action. Actually, breathlessness is also a sensation, isn't it? Breathlessness is a sensation. So the sensory center of the brain is involved in that perception. So morphine sedates the sensory cortex and reduces the perception of breathlessness. And it also reduces the hypercarbic ventilatory response. So that whenever you reduce the ventilatory response to carbon dioxide, it reduces the air hunger. And your breath will be deep, and it will sometimes also increases the capacity, lung capacity. So the dead space will be less. So that will help the patient in good gas exchange. And it can also reduce the anxiety. Morphine also reduces the anxiety. So we know that whenever we are breathless, we have anxiety, and some patients who are having severe breathlessness, they will think that am I going to die in this episode. So that anxiety can also be relieved by morphine. So these are the some mechanisms by which morphine will reduce the feeling of breathlessness. So start with small dose and see how the patient is responding to morphine, and you can titrate the dose according to the response.
Sir, once the patient is initiated on morphine, what is the dose of bisacodyl that we are expected to give him?
Okay, actually you can start with 5 milligram to BD, 5 milligram 2HS. Okay, or even you can titrate it according to the response of the patient. You can go up to usual maximum doses 10 milligram TID, but can be increased even to maybe 60 milligram. But whenever you start bisacodyl, that is stimulant laxative, it will be better to add some softeners or lubricant laxatives like liquid paraffin. That is Cramafin. That's the trade name.
Thanks.
And give metoclopramide for the first 5 days. And morphine, as you told, the problem is that we know that COPD, it's a chronic disease, and it will get worse after some time. So maybe it would be good to discuss with the patient regarding what should be the plan of care. Suppose this patient, I am not sure what happens to this patient. Whenever he is acutely breathless, sometime he will be admitted into the ICU, and this will happen very frequently in this patient. So that may not be, I don't know how much beneficial it will be, but sometimes this patient may also go on to ventilator sometime. So if you make a plan of care with the patient, okay, this is what is your problem. There should be an open discussion between the patient and patient family and the treating physician, and tell them what we can do and what they want. Do you want to get treated in an ICU if a situation like this comes? And do you prefer to be on ventilator if this situation comes? Most probably, when the patient knows and patient and family understand, it is not going to be a sustained a benefit for the patient. They will tell that, okay, if you can give me sustained relief, then I would prefer that. I don't want to be on a ventilator when my last moment comes. So if you plan it before, then you can give good quality of life for the patient and thereby to the family also.
Yes, sir. End of life decisions, right, sir?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sir, I have
Advance.
a question.
Yeah, and Dr.
This
Shilpa.
patient, so this patient also is suffering from BPS. So
Yeah.
would this small dose of morphine have any effect on urinary hesitancy? Will it increase the symptom or it doesn't?
Yeah, that's another concern which we have to keep in mind, because I told you one of the side effect of opioid is urinary hesitancy. So a low dose of morphine is not going to cause much problem, and this patient is already on silodosin, so it may not be a problem. But you have to keep in mind that if you give morphine along with other medication that can produce urinary retention, such as tricyclic antidepressants, sometimes it can produce urinary retention also. So you have to keep it in mind. Small dose like this may not be a problem, and you have to actually give good bowel movement. And for oxygen concentrator, I think these patients, if you can make a connection with the palliative care people around your institution, that will be helpful for them, because sometimes they will be able to help the patient to procure oxygen concentrator. If they have, sometime the palliative care unit will get donations from patients itself, and they can provide it to patient. But this may not be applicable to each and every palliative care center, but you can always ask, is there a concentrator with you?
Thanks.
And
Can
even, yes, Dr. Dattaram.
Can a table fan help in giving him some relief?
Yeah, Dr. Deepti.
Yes, we have got the gold guidelines regarding COPD, and they say, I don't know the exact mechanism, but they say that blowing air, not very fast air, but a moderate amount of air being blown onto the face of the patient by means of a table fan, that will help with the patient's dyspnea to some extent.
Yeah, actually there is a RCT, randomized control trial, on handheld fan. Okay, it's a small fan which can need to keep near the face, about 15 centimeter away from the face, and they have seen that it can actually be beneficial for the patients. And actually, the mechanism they say is by stimulating the trigeminal nerve area, uh, which uh, uh, actually relays the sensory information to the brain. By stimulating the trigeminal nerve, it reduces the breathlessness. That's what mechanism they says, but this is not conclusive.
Now, another thing is, I don't know how much I will be able to help this patient in this scenario, because his sons, they are neither, they are neither calling him up, and when we try to contact them from the hospital, they are neither picking up the calls. So he says it's been over 8 months since he has had contact with his sons. So I don't know if I can help the patient in any way in, contacting his sons.
Do you have a social worker working with you?
We don't have a social worker in our hospital, unfortunately.
Okay. It's in Kollam, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
It's near, is it near Chinnakada?
Not exactly near Chinnakada, maybe 12 kilometers away from Chinnakada.
Okay, there is a palliative care center at Chinnakada, and if you will be able to refer the patient to them, it will be helpful. And if you are referring the patient, please let us know. We can also put a word with the people there.
Yeah, sure, sir. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have put a question in chat box.
Okay, okay.
For metastasis, bone metastasis, the best painkiller. Hello.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Bone metastasis.
Bone metastasis, which
Which is ideal painkiller. Huh?
Okay, so actually opioids can give partial pain relief, but maybe if you can, if the bone metastasis is responsive to radiotherapy, then it will be better. Radiotherapy. And
all of the bones are metastatic.
All of then it will be difficult.
CA breast. A case
So-
of CA breast we have got to see.
So I think you will need a combination of medications, including opioids. If NSAIDs are not suitable, you have to give steroids along with the paracetamol.
Okay, thank you.
Rajashni, what are the other questions?
Sir, 1 second. Sir. Sir, I think we have cleared everything. The last question was, can opioids be given for patients in chronic respiratory failure?
Yeah, can be. Now, I'm asking in the chat question. Why stimulant laxative in case of morphine usage? Okay, so opioids produces constipation due to many mechanisms. It actually relaxes the longitudinal muscles of the intestine and increases the tone of the circular muscles. So there will not be a longitudinal peristalsis. And it also causes more absorption of water content from the bowel. Secretions will be reduced and tone of anal sphincter will be increased. All this will produce constipation. So you have to give some laxatives which will also increase the bowel movement. So Bisacodyl is a stimulant laxative. It will stimulate the colon in addition to its laxative action. Can it be given to 90-year-old lady with COPD? Yes. You can give, you can try with small doses.
So another questions are related to COPD. Some elderly people have very
You are muted.
troubling cough, which is like very it hampers their sleep, and maybe they have urinary incontinence because of so much cough. So, sir, can we use codeine syrup for those people to
For
provide symptomatic relief in this COPD people?
Why I didn't get the question completely. Can you repeat it once
Yes,
more?
I'm saying, sir, in elderly COPD patients who don't have, they're maintaining oxygen saturation. Breathlessness is not much issue, but they have a major component of cough, which is very troubling. Like they're not able to sleep, they have urinary incontinence because of that.
Yeah.
So, can codeine be used
Yeah,
for?
I
And
understood.
what is that? What is the availability? Can
Yeah.
it be available at a chemist?
So, Dr. Deepthi, what's your opinion about this?
We have dextromethorphan syrups available. It's a central cough suppressant. Earlier on, we used to get codeine syrups, but I don't know if that's available in the market. Because more than COPD patients with interstitial lung diseases, those patients are the ones who have severe cough. And also patients, we have COVID patients getting admitted here. And we had a category C COVID patient in the ICU. He had severe cough and cough leading to desaturation. Finally, we could not get any codeine syrup anywhere. So finally, we had to start him on morphine infusion. Following initiation of morphine infusion, his cough subsided. But we found that dextromethorphan works quite well for many patients as far as cough suppression is concerned. Sir might be able to help regarding the availability of codeine syrup.
Yeah. Dextromethorphan is a cough suppressant which can be used, but codeine was available previously. But now codeine comes under a category known as essential narcotic drugs (END). So only those institutions who have RMI status can get codeine. Otherwise, you will not be able to procure codeine. Okay. So codeine will not be available in the pharmacies now. You can use actually codeine to suppress the cough.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think our time is up. Let's wind up the session. So thank you, Dr.